I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. And you know, it's all about the neighborhood. This is a conversation about how we build our community, our neighborhood, house by house, family by family. We're focusing on business creation, business development, economic development, and culture.
In my room, I feel good when I'm thinking about my neighborhood.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Over the past year or two, a number of us have been meeting to talk about creating a sense of family in the African community. By African, I mean African American, East African, West African. And we have decided that it's our duty and our responsibility to share, to break bread, to talk about empowerment, to talk about our cultures, our similarities, our problems, but to find solutions that mean we bring power to our people and our community. One of the leaders of this initiative has been Al Flowers. Al, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Al.
And also today we have Kesha Walker, another organizer, another mastermind, helping bring our communities together. And one of the beneficiaries of this kind of conversation is Reva Chamblis. Reva Chamblis is running for City Council in Brooklyn Center. The objective for all of us, Brooklyn Park, thank you, Reva.
Okay.
The objective for all of us should be to keep putting our people in place, to create and direct policy in the public sector, to create more business opportunity, to create social service solutions. So I want to thank you, Al and Kesha, for the leadership you provided. And let's do some backgrounding now. When did you start on this path, Al Flowers, of trying to reach out to the Somali community and the West African Liberian community?
Well, Al, I started, it's been a few years ago when I was working with Abduzak Bihi, who was one of the real spearheads of us coming together. And we came together because discrimination going on within the Somali cab drivers. And things were happening to them that wasn't happening to other cab drivers. Mm-hmm. They were getting higher fees, they were getting tickets and things like that. And then it spearheaded into some bigger, because they were having some of the same problems that we were having, that we've been through as a people that over the years. So once I got together with him and started telling them, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. The city was doing tagging them with different things. The police were harassing them, wouldn't let them get out their cabs, wouldn't let them park their cab in different areas. And I just thought that was an injustice. And as you know, that's what we always fight against, is injustice for our people. So I thought that was really wrong for a community, the East African community, to come over and get treated like that. Mm-hmm. So, and then we had incidents where people, African Americans and a Somali cab driver had got shot, and we had to bridge the gap and start saying we are the same people. We're just different communities, whether it's East Africa, whether it's Liberia community where Kesha and them know about, learning that culture. And so that's what made me see our similarities. I didn't know, I had the same problems the Somalis had, problems with African Americans, because they didn't know us. Mm-hmm. And Abduzak Bihi, who would have been here if the Somali president wasn't here in town on this day, but they were told to stay away from African Americans. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of had a thing about, who do you think you are? And myself in particular, I did my show and I talked about Somali community, like, who do you think you are? We've been in this struggle all the time, and they looked at us wrong. They were wrong, and but I figured out that I was wrong about them, because we didn't tell them, hey, this is who we really are.
Right.
And so it's this coming together and bringing the rest of us together. We came to you and said, how do we keep moving this is where we're at now, to continue to fight for our social justice, politically, economically, it's all education-wise. We're last in everything. They're right there with us, but they got a little more. Their community is a little more stick together than we do.
That's kind of the immigrant experience as well.
Yeah.
They have to be together.
And that's what I didn't. I'm learning. I'm still learning now that what they do. I love what they do politically. That they, no matter if they're fighting and arguing, they continue to support each other, and that's what I hope That's what I hope comes to us out of this.
Kesha, you are born in Liberia?
Yes.
How long have you been here?
Wow, probably over 15 years now.
Most of your life?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
all
pretty
right.
old now.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. Now, you work with the Community Standards Initiative. You're involved in community life, and that's for the entire North Side area community. But you've been active in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park as well.
Absolutely.
And you've been at the forefront of this initiative along with Abdurazak Bihi and Al Flowers and our team, trying to say, you know what, we have so much in common. We're the same people, and we need to connect. Tell me why this is the right thing to do from your point of view. What brought you into this work?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Al, for having me. This is the first time I've ever done this, so I'm really excited. Thank you. This kind of work and this initiative, this movement was really important to me because I know my people and my culture. And having been here for so long, after our Civil War, a lot of our people, migrated and came to this country to elude the hardships that, came after all of that. So the integration and getting to know the American culture, is very different. We went through it many years ago and we learned and made our way. And now that the new generation, they're coming over, they've been over, I think it's important for us to be able to connect and reach back and let them know, what we've experienced, what we've gone through, how this works, how this doesn't work, and what the system is all about. Because coming from a third world country here, you don't understand the culture. It's a cultural shock. It's a different set of rules, system of things. And so it's important to be able to connect with our community and let them know about, the injustices, the different police brutality issues, things that we can do collectively, and most importantly, working and coming together with the African American and other African communities, because we do share a lot of the same struggles. Although our languages are different, our cultures are different, in one sense, we all share the same issues.
Let me ask you to talk about your culture, your upbringing at home in Liberia.
Sure.
Talk about you as a 5-year-old. Where were you born in Liberia?
I was born in Nimba County. It's one of the rural areas in Liberia. I was raised in the capital city of Monrovia. My father's always been into politics and things of that nature. He came to this country many years ago and obtained his master's and doctorate, and is currently the national education person in the country. And sent over for my mom. She came and got her bachelor's in nursing and sent over each of us one at a time. And I came first because I'm the only girl out of 6 boys. So getting an education was the whole reason for us coming here, and being able to give back to our community, our culture, our people.
And so Al Flowers alluded to the fact that he discovered from talking to Abdurazak Bihi that the Somali community didn't know the African American community. And what they did know constituted misinformation, disinformation. Is that true for the Liberian community as well?
Yes, it is.
And so talk about that.
Our community, we tend to stay away from the African American community. We tend to, the normal stereotypes, being involved in drugs and the gangs, and, we're kind of prepped as well coming to this country or before we come here.
What do you mean by that? I'm very curious about that.
Sure. Just letting us know that the African Americans, they don't have a culture. They don't have the same morals and values that we have, which is not true. But they tell us that. They tell us to be careful. There's a lot of drugs in the African American community, so that's something that we're really taught young to stay away from and stay out of that, and the violence and all of that, not knowing that environment and community and upbringing and all those types of things take a play into that individual person and how they make choices in life. But we came here thinking that that was just all African American.
And you got to be scared of black people, black Americans, right?
Yeah.
Al, is that what you found?
That's what I found, and that's what was being taught when they bring different cultures, immigrant communities over. My good friend Abzak B said he didn't know much about Malcolm X, or they talk about Martin Luther King some, but they didn't talk about some of our great heroes like Garvey that you have a lot of respect for. They didn't get that. They showed them the movies that was full of drugs, what Kesha just talked about, and violence and guns, and that's what they believed. And that's what got to me, was that that's why I used to do a show and just talk about the Somali community, and then they would call me and ask me, why you do that, my brother? And I'm like, no, why y'all do what you do? What are you, the pain? Because I kind of get upset when people forget what our ancestors went through, the struggle that they went through, and I look at our young kids today that don't know that we had a lot of people beat and died for them to be educated and things like that. So whenever we get miseducated, I get upset, and that's what I was doing with the Somali community, because I didn't understand. I didn't understand them either. I'm like, what do? You know what we went through, and they treated us like we were slaves. We were still, y'all just slaves. Y'all former slaves. You're nothing. And what Kesha just said, I'm sitting here. That's interesting to say that we didn't have a culture.
Right.
But we really did.
And that prepping came from our government, both the government and from social service agencies that might have been involved in inviting the immigrant communities to this country. So there's something happening here, Al Flowers, where you and I are working and paying taxes and supporting a government and trying to make this idea of the democracy for all Americans work, right? And the money that comes out of your labor and my labor and that of our sisters and brothers, our wives and family members and parents is money that supports the U.S. international and foreign policy mission. And so people operating on our behalf then are showing up in Somalia, Liberia, Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica, telling those people that might want to come here, you can come to America. This is a great country. It's the land of the free, the home of the brave. The streets are lined with gold. There's opportunity here. Come to America, but when you come, watch out for the black people.
Stay away.
And so they want us to pay for the denigration of our own culture, for the lie that they are perpetrating that serves to continue their policy of divide and conquer.
Yes.
It's not new. That's how they divided Africa. That's how they divided up North America, to take this from the people that were the original indigenous inhabitants here. So the point is, it's not over. It hasn't ended. And so it's critical that we have this conversation. And one of the places where it shows up, I think, is in political opportunity. What I think is really important is that the demographics of Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center have shifted drastically in the past 20 years. We always thought North Side was the hub of the black community, and it has been and it is, and then South Side and Summit University in St. Paul. But the new hub is actually Brooklyn Park.
Right.
Reva, talk about Brooklyn Park. What's happened there in the past generation, and why is it that we may be looking at Brooklyn Park now as the heart of the black community?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and yes, the Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center area has changed. And as a matter of fact, my brother graduated from Park Center High School in 1979. He was one of 2 African Americans in the school and one of 2 graduates in his senior class. So you can see that it's changed very much, to the point where Brooklyn Park is actually more diverse than Minneapolis or St. Paul. And I think that figure surprises a lot of people. And there is a lot of diversity in Brooklyn Park amongst the population of people of color. There are 25% African Americans, 15% Asian, a growing Hispanic population of 10% and higher, which makes that means that we are actually going past 50% people of color in Brooklyn Park. And they're all incomes, actually.
And so now whites are the minority, almost.
Yeah,
In
so you
Brooklyn
can
Park.
expect that word minority to change pretty quickly here.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so what does it mean politically? You're running for city council, let me say we're.
That's correct.
At the date of this taping, the primary is a few days away, and local pundits are indicating that they expect you to prevail in the Brooklyn Park primary, and that if you prevail, you likely will be elected as the first African-American or African member to the Brooklyn Park City Council.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
So let's talk about that process then, and because there have been several people seeking that position for years.
For years, yes.
And what's happened, it seems to me, is that a consistent inability to come together around a candidate, and more often than not, a divided black community, somebody white wins the election. Is that correct?
That can be a factor in
Has it been the factor in the past?
It has been a factor in the past, and it continues to be a factor that, not just in Brooklyn Park that we deal with, but in other communities in Minnesota and probably outside of Minnesota as well. I think it's very important that people understand the importance of the political process and how we get work done. Everybody has a part to play. You may have a person that's involved in social work. You may have someone that's doing political work, another person doing religious work or educational work. All of it is a part of the collective power that we have to put together as leaders and as communities to make it work. And we need to also see the political process not as something that is negative, politicians not as people who are negative, but a part of what we need to advance in our society.
And so how do you assess your chances right now? How's it look to you at this moment?
Well, I think right now my chances are very good that I'll have an opportunity to get that seat on the Brooklyn Park City Council in the East District. And one of the reasons is because of the support from the people in a collective manner. I have received a number of endorsements. I'm endorsed by the DFL party, as well as labor unions, Teamsters, and Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation. And the person whose seat I'm replacing, that's an open seat, Elizabeth Knight, has endorsed me to replace her. And so I have a lot of support from local officials, from organizations, and from residents who believe that they need a person who is qualified, who can bring fresh ideas and allow that community to thrive with the benefits that we have of such a diverse population. And I mean diverse from the isolated, racially concentrated areas of poverty that we have in Brooklyn Park, that's 1 of 5 in Minnesota, to the growing middle-class population of people of color, in particular African Americans in Brooklyn Park, that have a great buying power in the city that I think has been pretty much ignored. Much of our buying power is actually being exported outside of Brooklyn Park, including the way that we volunteer. Many of the people that I talk to volunteer in Minneapolis and St. Paul, including myself. I volunteer in both. I work with the African American Family Reunion here, and then I also work with organizations in the city of Brooklyn Park.
We'll come back and talk some more about that. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Stay tuned. We'll continue this important conversation.
Africa.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome back to Conversations with Al McFarlane. My guests today are principals in the creation of an exciting organization, really a movement. It's called the African and African American Family Reunion. We are people that have decided that it's our duty, our responsibility to know each other, to break bread, to share, and to figure out how we empower each other, ourselves, bring our voices in service to our own people, but that really means in service to humanity. That's the beauty of it. Reva, you've thrown your hat in the ring. You're looking to
Yeah.
be the first African-American to serve on the city council of Brooklyn Park.
Yes.
And I know that your intent and the spirit that you bring is one that reflects your belief that serving black people doesn't mean that you don't serve anybody else. Your vision, your history, your path is about inclusion, and you believe that to serve our people means you serve everybody and serve them well. Is that correct?
That is correct. I believe that when you have the expertise and the knowledge of a particular community, it is your responsibility and duty to use that knowledge, that expertise, and to serve that community. And so I have, no apology about that. But I also understand that, one part of the community is a smaller part of a larger community. And so when that smaller part of the community prospers, then that means that the entire community is prospering that much more. And so that's important, and people need to understand that it's a win-win situation.
And what are you hearing on the campaign trail? How do people respond to your energy and your invitation to support you? And I asked this not so much about this campaign, but so that listeners and viewers might say, you know what, I can do this. It's a good idea, and I might want to be a member of a block club or a member of a city council or a town hall. You got to start.
You got to start somewhere, and I think you put it really nicely. You may not want to start as a politician. Maybe you're going to start with your block club, or maybe you want to work with youth, or maybe you want to work with the elderly. Whatever it is, if everybody does a little part to better their community, we're all going to grow from it, we're all going to prosper from it and be a better community.
Talk about Brooklyn Center. Describe your town.
Well, I work in both Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park. Most of my work is focused in Brooklyn Park, and I work in a number of
And
capacities.
I keep saying Brooklyn Center,
Everybody
not
does
Brooklyn
it.
Park. right?
Everybody does
Okay.
it. Everybody does it. And I think we'll be a twin city before you know it, just
Mm-hmm.
like Minneapolis and St. Paul. We call ourselves the Brooklyns.
Uh-huh.
So it's okay.
The Brooklyns, okay.
Yes. So your question again?
Describe the Brooklyns.
Well, I would say that Brooklyn Park is a very vibrant community. It has a lot of diversity. It has a lot of trails. And it's a very beautiful city. I've had a chance, because of my campaign, to walk from one part of the city to the next. And I tell you, the improvements that have been made in the last 20 years are great. And we can do even greater things. And that's what my goal is to reinvigorate, help redevelop the cities, and also look at the opportunities that we have in Brooklyn Park to have new development and create our master plan for a better quality of life. And in order to do that with the kind of demographics that we have in Brooklyn Park, they really need people who understand how to make the maximum benefits out of our population. And I've been able to help do that even before getting in the seat of Brooklyn Park, talking to city officials, meeting with staff members, being appointed to the core planning and strategic team, being a human rights commissioner, examining the disparities that exist in Brooklyn Park, talking with police officers, the fire chief, and meeting with the superintendent of schools. My goal is to get an understanding before I lead, and then work together collaboratively with other leaders to ensure that we can have prosperity and equity for all.
There's a lot of business development right now in Brooklyn Park, is that correct?
That is correct.
What's-
Right along Highway 610. And we have a number of companies that are moving in, that some have looked at cities and chosen Brooklyn Park as the place that they want to live. So what I did was talk to the city manager and asked him to share the vision of the city with the people of Brooklyn Park so that they can get behind it and support it. I think leaders need to understand that as well. Share your vision, get people around it, and then strategically have leaders and community members support that vision and move things forward. And I think it's going to require a person and people who understand what it means to have transformative leadership. And that's what I want to do. I want to transform cities. I want to transform neighbors. And I'm not going to do it by myself. I'll do it with people like the folks that are sitting here, with people like you who can communicate what those visions are and make it become a reality. And they need to have some successes along the way. And that's what's going to inspire people. When they see me win, that's going to inspire somebody else.
Kesha, let me ask you from within the Liberian community in Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park, what's the political landscape? I know we've had candidates from Liberia, but nobody's been successful so far. And part of the problem, in part, has been the division, either several candidates, nobody wins. How does it look right now, and how do you describe the aspirations of the Liberian community in the political arena?
You know, I think the younger generation, they're kind of getting more involved. We have several crises going on in the country now, and that we're kind of focused on right now in backing that and supporting our people back home. And I'm seeing more and more of the younger generation getting more and more involved into wanting to see change and being an advocate for change and being a part of that.
So Al, jump in. You've also been a principal behind the Community Standards Initiative. And Kesha's involved in that. I think all of us are at some level or another connected to both the idea or the experience. But describe that, because what we're talking about is how our communities become accountable to ourselves and how we hold other people accountable as well.
Well, yes, Al, and absolutely, and Kesha and Elaine and Daphne, the ones that's working on, they doing the groundwork. I organized it to get it there, and what we have to do in our community is know what we can do and what we can't do, and what Reva's talking about, us participating. She got a vision and us sharing the vision, and that's what Community Standard, CSI, Community Standard Initiative, was me looking at the situation of our young kids. We've been talking about at this show about where they're at. They don't know what we went through. They don't know I know what my ancestors, I know what my grandmother went through. I know what my mother went through. I know I had trouble when I was a kid. I did things I shouldn't have did. But I survived it, and I'm here now, and I told my mother she was my hero. And I just told her that this year in Black History Month, and she started crying because she stayed with me. My mother stayed with me and no matter what I did, when she shipped me to Arkansas, from Chicago to Arkansas, every year I say I ain't gonna do it no more. She sent me back, but she never let me go. And I think our kids need to know that people like Reva and Kesha and what they do and what we trying to do to get the message that you have been doing for way longer than me, getting the message out about our people, even when I was fighting against the message. I didn't know that we were divided. I didn't know what I was doing. When I first got into the political arena, getting out there, I was always fighting, and I was fighting the wrong battles, and I don't want our young people to go through experience what I had to experience to get to this point. It took me years to get to the point and say, wait a minute, I'm arguing about something that our people would not adapt to. They wouldn't. We weren't involved. We're not involved. We don't. It's like we didn't care no more. And I know that's not what our ancestors wanted. For us to be not. You have to keep talking about what they went through. And our kids say, oh, it don't matter now. Yes, it does. There's still the psychological impact on African Americans is still there. That's why we get mad at when my friend B, he was, or Kesha and them say, we don't have a culture. We had a culture. It was survival, a culture of survival. And how do we eat? We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have the resources. So with Community Standard Initiative, talking about getting back to good, telling responsible communication. So if we're arguing at the government, the county, the state, the city, we can argue, but if our people don't understand what we're arguing about, then it comes for nothing. So that's why CSI, I think it's a big deal, and I think people like Kesha and them who's got to do the work, they got to talk to the kids and bring the kids along to tell them, hey, you can live better. We don't have to live where we hear shooting and we hear the shooting and then there's no grief session. We hear people getting shot and then our kids go back in the house. If you're in the white community out in Eden Prairie or Edina, even Brooklyn Park, they call the school together and they bring everybody in. But our kids are still suffering under this system.
Trauma.
It's trauma. It's a big trauma, and so we have to continue to make this fight and say if we hold ourselves accountable, then I know we can hold the officials accountable. And then when we get elected people like Reva, like Keith Ellison, like Senator Hayden, and champion them. Champion that's fighting for Rena Moran and that's fighting for our rights. But we got to get behind them, and that's what I've learned through you. I say it all the time. I have to keep apologizing from the way I was acting because I thought everybody was against me because I was the way I was fighting, and it was the way I was doing it. So I learned, I got educated. You can be older and still get educated, and I'm still learning. And even when you do the right thing, you still can get beat. You still can get beat down. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, let me ask you about your background. We're having a chance to talk about where you came from. You mentioned your mom. What's your own personal background? Born in Chicago?
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. My mom left and took us to Chicago. I was 6 weeks when she moved me to Chicago, the Robert Taylor Projects, 4950 State, 1608. That's where my whole childhood memories, going to Beethoven, and some people know about DuSable was across the street from our building. But I went to Beethoven Elementary School. I got 5 sisters. I had a brother that passed in the project when he was 11 months. But my mom, I was raised by a single mother, and then we didn't know we was poor. We didn't know we were poor because we ate every day. But now that I look back at what she did with 6 kids that were living, 7 at one time, but 6 kids, and she stuck with us, and we stayed there in Chicago on the south side until I would think I was like 12, and then we moved to the west side of Chicago. So I got both sides of life in K-Town in Chicago, on 15th and Avers and things like that.
What was that like?
I'm the only boy. So I had a thing about, making sure my sisters was all right. My mom worked as a waitress at the restaurants, H&H, and did things like that, and took great care of us. But I was always the man that, that made sure that my sister, that we had something to eat. There was some days I had to make sure I had to steal the butter and buy the syrup. But I did work to buy the syrup, and we had to make the flour pancakes. But we remember that. My sisters remember today how we survived. I swept floors at 7 years old. 7 years old, I was sweeping the hallways in Robert Taylor. So I always had the work ethic to try to bring some money home. So, and then, my dad moved here to Minnesota. He was in St. Louis, and then he moved to Minnesota. And I came to visit here in like 70-something. And then I came back in 78. And I came back, he had cancer. He died at 42. And then, so we went to the funeral in Arkansas, and we went back through Chicago and with my uncle, and they had a U-Haul, and we was moving to Minnesota. My mom was getting us out right then and brought us back to Minnesota, and I loved it. I loved it. I wouldn't trade it, but I'm still a Bear fan.
Yeah, and you haven't been afraid of a fight.
I think my mom, that she never had us be racist or nothing like that. We didn't understand that, we was in a black community in Chicago. And so we never had that to understand that we was being deprived of something. And, but once you learn the system and you other people, you see the struggle of other people. That's what Reva's running for. They, she know that's what you keep doing the show, saying this is not right. What's happening to people, be fair, which is, it seemed like an easy question to be fair, to ask to be fair. But it seems so hard for the powers that control all the resources that come to us, particularly African Americans.
So what did you discover when you tried to look at Minnesota, black folks in Minnesota, and how we are treated by or respected or disrespected by the quote-unquote power? How did it look to you?
Well, I think it's now compared to when I came here, it was, they can appease us now because it wasn't that many people of color, African Americans, when I got up here. But now that people have gravitated here, it became different because we're going to be the majority in 2020, 2040. We'll be the majority of people of color, and it's a system shock for some. So the way we're being treated. We help that, and I, like I said earlier, just a minute ago, I was a part of helping that because I kept, I was keeping the division going within our community, just fighting against our community members for no reason and doing it publicly, and I've learned that that's what they wanted me to do, and I wasn't so I can do it, but it wasn't bringing us anything new. So now when they see us come together, it's even more that they trying to figure out, okay, how do we stop this? If we're together, they can't stop us no more. And then if we bring the family unity, I know in a few years, or a couple of years, next couple of years, with the Liberian community, the Somali community, the Eritrean community, all those communities, when we come together, we'll be the most a powerful minority there is, but and we want to work with everybody. One thing about the African Americans, no matter what people do to us, you can come in with our community. But that's what I know. One thing, no matter what you do, we always a forgiving community, a forgiving people. But we don't have to forget slavery.
That's right.
But we remember, and we should make sure our kids know that that part of our life.
Al Flowers, I want to thank you. The time goes so fast. We're up and at the end of the program. And I want to thank you all for being here. And thank you for the work that you do. Keep up the good work. Reva, expect to see great things from you.
Thank you.
In City Council in Brooklyn Park.
Thank you.
And Kesha, Al, Abdurazak Bihi, all the team that you've assembled to create this African family reunion, the African American Family Union. It's the right time, it's the right thing, and I believe we're going to win. I'm Al McFarlane. Stay tuned, we'll continue this important conversation.
What is it? ¿Y qué se llama?
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome back to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Continuing my conversation with Al Flowers and Kesha Walker. Al, fascinating story, and it's good to hear you talk about your process of growing and developing, gaining awareness, but also reminding yourself of why you're in the fight in the first place. Let me respond to some of the things you said. You said that you felt that you were making divisive actions in the community. And I simply say, from my point of view, everybody does what he needs to do, and we all are growing, right? And so if you hadn't been there, you wouldn't be here now.
Right.
And so I think you should always just accept that you're going to be changing and growing. We all do. We all learn. We all make mistakes, and we keep doing better and keep doing better. So I want to applaud you for staying the course and not saying, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm taking my marbles and I'm going home. You've come back again and again and again, always on the side of right, on the side of our people. So I thank you for that. And so, what gives you pleasure right now in terms of your work in the community? What's driving you? What's motivating you?
I think what motivates me now, Al, is the fact that, when I'm working with things like CSI, Community Standard Initiative, talking about our kids' education and how important it is. It all ties in. Education, if we don't get the education, we're not going to get the economics. That's how they've been fooling us for a long time, and I think that's the crisis, the main crisis for particularly African Americans or minority kids, Latinos too. It's Native Americans, American Indians. The education that we're not getting, and over the last 4 years, 66% are not graduating of people of color, particularly African Americans, and so to be in that fight to say no, we want the education, and to try to get, that's what give me the joy to keep going, because if we don't.
So how does the institution respond to you? Here's what I hear from people in the community. Parents, for example, they may have a child in the Minneapolis Public Schools. They go to the school on behalf of their child, trying to make sure the kid is doing right or whatever. And as often as not, I hear they feel they are ignored, treated like they are not important, that they don't know what's going on. The school is not inviting and doesn't recognize them as having a valuable role to play. And so the teachers, they say, are more concerned about their own jobs and not about the children, the mission of educating. That might be a gross oversimplification, but that's what I have heard. What do you hear?
I think what's happening here, and that's part of the blaming each other. I think it's a crisis. It's a crisis, and I'm not one that believe the teachers are at fault, because I think that me as a parent, we have to take control of this situation. You said earlier, we pay the taxes. It's our dollars. We get to determine of what happens here. But we have to show up. We have to produce. Our community won't show up. We can show up for the one big meeting. That's why I admire the Somali community or the other African immigrant community, because if things are happening in their community, they show up
Again and again and again.
Keep
Showing up.
and they keep showing up, and so we can have the power if we come together. That's what I've learned. I won't blame the teachers. They get a lot of resources to deal with our kids. Now they have a problem giving us resources in our community. If we come and say, hey, let us help here, they much rather have white social workers dealing with a problem that they can't deal with. The teachers, whether you got black or white teachers, the teachers who come from the suburbs and come and seeing that our kids who dealing with the trauma we talked about earlier, that's coming to school, we don't care. They don't care about nothing. They coming in and they don't care. They've seen death the day before, and you come in trying to teach them without explaining that no, this shouldn't happen to a young kid. And so our young kids, even in kindergarten, Al, they're suspended in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. I don't even remember getting suspended in kindergarten or first grade. I might got a little older. I didn't really get suspended. I said I was doing bad then, but I didn't get suspended from school the way they do them now.
Right.
So the culture shock for the teachers on how do they deal with our kids, and then we'll say we need black teachers. Well, if you got black, or if a kid is not being respectful, it doesn't matter what color you are, it's not going to happen. And then we need to find out why that kid's not being disrespectful. That's CSI. What they're supposed to do, help them. What's the problem? It's other problem than social economic problems that's been perpetrated on our community that we don't have to talk about. We ain't got to cry about it no more. We know the stats now.
It seems like we've got an environment that's rich in many ways. There's so much construction, for example, so much business development, such a beautiful community. There's such a great parks system here. But the question is, are our people finding it easy or finding themselves capable of accessing those resources? Are we getting the jobs we should be getting in our community? The answer is no, because we've got high unemployment. Are we using the health system that has rendered Minnesota the healthiest state in the nation? The answer is no, because the disparity shows that we have a lot of problems in the health arena. And are we getting this excellent education opportunity? Minnesota's the best in the nation, but the disparity, the gap is wide. And so without blaming, we have to say, though, that there's a big problem. And I hear you saying we have to focus on taking control of the solution, that we can't ask people to solve the problem. It's up to us. Is that what you're saying?
That's absolutely what I'm saying, Al. And we must demand, we can't ask them, we can't say this is what we need. We got to make them give us, we got to make demands from our community. And again, I keep reflecting on Behe, who didn't show up but wanted to. And what he's taught me, and they make demands just over on Cedar Riverside, where they went to them and made them give their community jobs, and they didn't push back. They didn't push back because they know that some of these things are wrong, some of this development going on that we don't get to be a part of. But you get resources for us to be a part of it.
Explain that. That's a good point. Say that again.
Yeah, because you get there's projects go on, and the government will give you subsidies because you said I'm gonna make sure that it's diverse. This development is gonna be diverse, and then they do it and they cut the deals, and then we don't get none of the action. Then you could ride by the construction site, particularly where you live in North Minneapolis. Then you ride up and down Broadway, and you got all these construction going on, and it's all white workers. Then me and Reverend McAfee, I went with him. He went to the one on Walgreens on Lindale. He went up there, and then he talked to the guy, and he got them to say, "Yeah, okay, well, we'll give you some jobs." Him and Lewis King and Spike Moss, they went up there at the Walgreens. Then me and him, Reverend McAfee, went to the one across from the Capri Theater. The guy said, "We didn't know. We didn't. If y'all want some jobs, so we have to go demand it and look for it." And I was amazed. I went with him that second time, and I was like, "Oh, wow, wait a minute." And it happened. Yeah, so it's for us to speak up if we want it.
But see, still, when you do, Al Flowers, quite often in our own community, we get criticized. You get criticized a lot. People will say, you, Spike Moss, Reverend McAfee, Lewis King, and others.
Yeah.
If you raise a voice about injustice, inequity, lack of access, the refusal of companies to consider our community for work, et cetera, people will say, oh, that's just Al Flowers. They always out there making noise. How do we deal with that?
Well, like I told Kesha, they dealing with stuff with CSI right now when they, somebody called into the radio show and was talking about, oh, you got 400,000 for CSI, and I said, well, and I told him I'm going for 400 million if that's okay with you. We have to not be scared to say no. We're supposed to get what anybody else get. If we don't, we're never gonna move. So what I have did, I've learned. I mean, to be talking about me, who am I? When I was talking about everybody else, to say, but if we're delivering stuff to our community, I don't let it bother me. I won't respond to it. I don't respond because I think if we respond, then it gives them some. I let our community respond. With my incident that happened earlier, when something happened to me that wasn't good, and I'm not out there just beating a drum on that, but the community came out and did something that I knew. They said what I've been doing is okay. I mean, there was so much respect that came at the Urban League for me when I went through an incident where I was hurt. I was hurt about what I was feeling, but when I came there and seen all these people there for me. It was something that I'm never going to forget, what Spike Moss did with that press conference. Reverend McAfee and Scott Gray stood up as the NAACP and Urban League was sitting beside me. So whatever anybody says, if it's not going to advance our cause, then I just let it go by, because I know, like you said earlier, we're gonna win. We're gonna win this battle, and our community, our kids are gonna know what we do by our message, putting it out, and us uniting as a people. So I know we're surviving people. That's what I want to keep telling my kids. My son spoke, and I'm sitting there looking at him like I did my job. You know,
You did a good job,
as you would say to your kids, if you keep saying what you're saying at home, they tap on them no matter what they going through. They know what you're fighting about, and they know you're fighting for our social justice. And that's why I'm still happy, even though whatever I'm going through, I'm happy right now, because I know that we're going to win this battle.
Kesha, so when you hear an Al Flowers or an Al McFarlane have this conversation, what goes through your mind? And I ask you that as three things. One, as a black woman, as a young woman, and as an immigrant. You're hearing a couple of guys that have been around for a long time and fighting a long time. What's going through your mind as you hear this conversation?
You know, it's always very moving and it's humbling because, you know, sitting in the presence of Mr. Al McFarlane and all of your history and knowledge and richness that you bring to everything and everywhere we go. We learn from you all the time, you know. And Al, we've been with Al, we've been family since in the early 2000s. So we've seen his fight, we've seen his struggles. Even now when we hear him speak, we're, you know, like, oh my God, he did so good. He's gotten so much better, you know, because he's grown and we've seen his transformation. His passion hasn't died at all. And it's just fueled us even more to become and be more passionate about the fight that we're fighting and the movement that, you know, we're all a part of. So it's a great experience. It's a learning experience. It's something, you know, we've been walking alongside this man and, you know, with him for a long time. And, you know, we trust in, you know, the direction that we're headed.
I think Al Flowers and I would say we trust you and your generation, that you and the young people, the cohort that you're part of, are trained, you're knowledgeable, and you're fearless, and that you're committed to social justice and economic justice. And there was a time, Al, when we'd be around, not us so much, but other people, be wringing their hand about the younger generation, how bad they are, they're lost, or even if there are some dysfunctional people and dysfunctional instances in our community, I think you and I believe and demonstrate our faith that on balance, we are winning and we continue to rise. And when we see Kesha Walker and her generation, her young people, I think it gives us pride in your forthrightness and in your confidence in what you are going to do. So, but I ask you to look downstream from where you are, and what do you see behind you? And what are the aspirations that you have and that you want to impart to the generations that are going to follow?
Absolutely. I definitely want us to be more involved. You know, like Al was just saying, us demanding what it is that we want, us being vocal, you know, in a healthy way, you know, as Al's learned over the years, and just coming together and being able to communicate our struggles and exactly what it is we're fighting for, identifying with one another, and being that support system for, you know, each other, because our battles aren't different. You know, it's coming by way of different cultures and, you know, but our battles are the same. And so just seeing that the younger generations being empowered and being moved and finally seeing the light and feeling fed up and seeing the social injustices and wanting to be a part of it, and, you know, from gentlemen like Boots on the Ground and COI and the different pieces of Community Standards Initiative that's been put in place, it's absolutely amazing. We have culturally competent and specific mental health professionals. We have, you know, people in education in different levels that, you know, are with us and fighting, you know, side by side with us. And it's amazing. I'm just thankful to be a part of this movement.
Al Flowers, let me ask you if you agree with me on this. I have said often that I am so happy that we have this growing immigrant population. I think the presence of Liberians and Somalis and West Indians in our black community simply bring more power, fresh energy, fresh blood, and more soldiers to the fight. There was a time when you could hear in our families and in our neighborhoods, why are they here? And if they get it, we don't get it. I think we're moving past that. I think what you are doing, and what we're doing is moving us past that and moving us to where we understand that we're the same people anywhere on planet Earth. And what's happening here in North Minneapolis is connected to what's happening in Monrovia, in Accra, in Mogadishu, in Miami, you know, in South Minneapolis. Same people, same struggle. And so I'm glad that you've made a point of reaching out to the East African and West African and Caribbean African communities. We have to reach out to the Afro-Latino community as well. We don't think about the Brazilians and the Colombians and the Mexicans who are African people, but that's part of our family as well. Closing up, Al, final word here. Just what's your expectation, what's your aspiration?
I'd never do a show without talking about two great people in this struggle over the last few years, and that's Senator Hayden and Senator Champion. I mean, Al, what they have done for me, as looking at me as a man, as a person, activist, political people that that would put their political capital to say Al is all right. That's what I get, and if I give that back, when I see the senators, I'm introducing Kesha, and this is Senator Hayden and Champion, and I'm on the phone. I'm having the fun of my life politically in this fight. When anybody I'm around, if Senator Hayden or Champion call, hey, what's going on, Senator? For me to be saying that, I know who they are.
That's a big deal.
So that's a big deal to me, and it's a big deal for me to be sitting here on your show.
Well, it's a big deal
all
for
your
me
fighting.
to have you on my show as well. And
Thank
Kesha.
you.
I'm Al McFarlane. This has been Conversations with Al McFarlane. As always say, it goes so quickly, but it's a good conversation, as promised, a robust conversation. Join me again next time for Conversations with Al McFarlane.
Here's a quick insight to health tip for a workout you can do at home. Whether you're cleaning, whether you're just walking around the backyard, pick up your pace. If you do something for 20 minutes of getting your heart rate up, you're gonna burn some calories. And again, although we'd like to have you in the gym, if you can't find the time, you always have 20 minutes in every day.
Quick tip from Open Cities Health Center on how to lower your blood pressure. Eat foods with less salt. You can try and exercise, avoid alcohol, avoid tobacco, and try and get on a regular sleep schedule, and try to manage your stress.
Quick insight to health tip. Guys, you want to make sure you have water in your system. One thing we do at the Fit Lab is make sure that people bring water and we charge them for water, whether they don't have it or not. Reason being is you have to prepare. If you don't prepare for your day, nutritionally, and have water in your system, it's not going to happen. Drink water, eat healthy, live good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We got to say goodnight. We want to thank Al McFarlane for bringing us all those great words and all our lovely guests, all the guests in the house. Everything's good, So I want y'all to tune in every Tuesday morning, right around 9 o'clock. Cause we're gonna play you a song. All the guests will be home. We'll be feeling like talking. Have a robust conversation. Cause this thing is safe. The message is clear. Everybody knows we gotta keep it right clear. We just going to talk about the Al McFarlane Show.